Right, hi everyone. Yes, I wanted to do a Thursday night stream because I came across some information that I just wanted to get out there before I do the next part of the bullet points of the Celebrity Skin Videodrome chapter of the Manson File. And after that stream, I posted a picture that I found in box 11 of all those boxes of evidence, PDFs, that Bo Emerson shared on his Facebook page. In box 11, there's a picture of a Sony video cassette. And I posted that, and in that box 11, it's all stuff about the Spartan Ranch raid. So I'd assumed that it had come from the Spartan Ranch raid. But when I posted it in my Facebook group, Josh pointed out, look at the tag, you can find the date in the transcript. And so I looked at the transcript, and this tape box was actually shown to Winifred Chapman, the maid. And they were asking her if she'd ever seen any boxes like it. And so that led me to read a whole transcript. And yeah, some crazy stuff came up. So I wanted to do a stream about that tonight, basically. Yeah, and also I found some of the pictures that they're showing her. I can actually show you as well what they were showing her. I couldn't find all of them in time, but I'm pretty sure they're all in the boxes of evidence. I've got a couple of them here, and you can identify what one of the marks is because he tells her when he's putting the mark on it, and that's interesting if you've watched other streams I've done about this subject, obviously. And yeah, there's going to be two parts to what I read out of the transcript, and it's the second part where she says what she actually saw at the crime scene. So if you're just interested in that, I'll make sure there's chapters in the description and you can hear that. But yeah, in the first part that I'm going to read out, though, it gets pretty crazy. She's talking about Garrettson, and she calls him the houseboy, and then there's 2 pages missing, and there's nothing else about Garrettson. So it's quite strange, indicative they were trying to cover something up, isn't it? Yeah. And yeah, so well, I'll just chat to the chat for a minute. Like I say, I'll make sure there's chapters in the description before I start reading. Right, so yeah. Hello, everyone. Yeah, that is one of the things, isn't it, that Nicholas says in that interview recently, and he says it in the Manson File as well. And he's not the only person who mentions Cary Grant being up there. There's a rumour that Cary Grant was the guy fooling around with someone on the back trails that night as well, isn't there? So yeah, that's nothing to do with what else you were saying, but I just wanted to show that. Right, yeah, I reckon I'll just start reading straight away. Do that there, right. Yeah, and I'm not going to read out everything. It's just her being sworn in, and they ask her what kind of duty she was doing. But note the number at the top of the page, not the number of the page of the PDF, but the actual number at the top of the page there. It's 4577. And they ask her, did you ever perform light housekeeping duties in connection with any of the furniture or ashtrays or cupboards in the loft area, the living room? I would empty the ashtrays. I didn't go in the cupboards for anything. Now, you pointed out on the diagram that near the main house there is a so-called guest house. Is that right? Yes. The guest house is where Mr. Altobelli lived. Is that right? Yes. But Mr. Altobelli wasn't living there during the early days of August, was he? He was out of town. And there was somebody living in the guest house, though, wasn't there? Yes. Who was that? Bill Garrettson. And he was a young man, was he not? Yes. And he had something to do with Mr. Altobelli's dogs, right? I don't know what he did for the dogs. I know he was his houseboy. Now look, it goes to page 4580. And it ends with the word pull, the question. But the question's missing, right? So there's 2 pages missing there. Nothing suspicious about that, though, is there? But yeah, as soon as she says he was his houseboy, that's it. 2 pages missing. Yes, when they were there in the afternoon, yes. Did Mr. Frykowski use the pool from time to time, to your knowledge? Often, daily. What about Gibby Folger? Yes. And what about Mrs. Polanski? Yes. Were you also familiar with John Sebring, also known as J. Sebring? I've never heard of him called John Sebring. That's weird. Yes. And he was a frequent visitor to the Polanski residence, was he not? Thomas John Sebring, she says. Yeah, his name was Thomas Cummer, wasn't it? No, he was not a frequent visitor. Not a frequent visitor. And that's strange because a lot of other sources say that Jay was a frequent visitor. So why is she saying Jay wasn't a frequent visitor? How often, if at all, did you remain overnight at the Polanski residence? Not too often. Once a month, twice a month, once a week? I couldn't term it like that. It would all depend on what I was doing, or even if I weren't doing any work. If I were tired and didn't feel like going home, then I would stay. When was the last time before that Saturday morning that you remember staying over the Polanski residence overnight? The last night I stayed was the day after Mrs. Polanski returned. We had guests for dinner and I served a late dinner, so I stayed all night. When was that? The day after Mrs. Polanski returned from Europe, now whatever date that was. That would be in July, yes. And where would you sleep when you would stay overnight? My bedroom was the room that she was turning into a nursery. And that room was being painted on Friday, August the 8th, was it not? Yes. And there were 2 painters at the Polanski residence that afternoon, the afternoon of Friday, August the 8th, isn't that correct? No. No, there weren't. No, 1 painter. And he wasn't there in the afternoon, he was there in the morning. And he left at noon. He left around 12:30, 1, something like that. I let him in about 8:30, 8:45. What time did you leave Friday afternoon, do you recall? Between 4 and 4:30. Up until the time you left on Friday, had anybody used the pool to your knowledge that day? Yes. When was that? Joanna Pettit and whoever else was with her. They were all in the pool before I served lunch. I served a late lunch that day. We had guests for lunch. Did you assist in the planning of a party for the evening of Friday, August the 8th? In the planning of a party for Friday? No. Were your housekeeping duties on Friday any different than they were on any other day of the week? No, except I served a very late lunch. Now, I take it on Friday you know that you were going to work on Saturday, is that correct? Yes. Was there any reason why you were going to work on Saturday? Yes, because she wanted me in Saturday. Did you ever see movies being made at the Polanski residence? Movies in the house, you mean? Her photographer would come up there and take pictures of her out of doors when we were at the Cielo house. Was that Mr. Hatami? Yes. What I was referring to was movie motion pictures. Did you ever see movie motion pictures being made inside the house or in the pool area? No. Did the home have the facilities for showing motion pictures? I don't know. Did you ever see a screen within the living room? No. And a projector set up to show films? No. Did you ever see a videotape player in the house itself? Pause. Do you know what a videotape player is? I am trying to think. I don't think so. I don't know. I am not going to worry about that. Mr. Fitzgerald. This, Your Honour, concludes my aspect of the cross-examination. Sorry, it's not very well printed. I wonder, before I defer to other if I might approach the bench with counsel. The court, very well. Right, and I've done bullet points of this because, yeah, it's when they go to the desk. Right, Fitzgerald wants to change the order of cross-examination for some reason, and they let him. Fitzgerald makes a demand to see all notes made by Winifred Chapman to the police. He says Bugliosi says there was no more, but he wants to demand them for impeachment purposes. Buggs responds that the only note that affects his client, Krenwinkel, is Fitzgerald's client, is the stuff about Winifred cleaning the door on August the 5th, and that's the only departure from her police statement. Fitzgerald says he's never seen any police report where Chapman says she cleaned the door, the one where they found Krenwinkel's print. Buggs says that's because the police never asked her that question, only he did. The court asks Buggs if there are any more reports. He says he doesn't know. The judge says he'll ask to see them if there are more. Right, and then they go back to grilling Chapman. Sorry, got to switch about. Right, and then I go to page 91. Sorry about this. It's just what you got to do. Right. So the cross-examiner, now Mr. Shin examines her. Mrs. Chapman, you stated that you had various conversations with the police department and with the district attorney's office. Yes. Did you ever have a conversation with Mr. Bugliosi here? Yes. How long ago? The last conversation? I don't remember. Was it a couple of days ago? Let's see. We had a conversation this morning, and the date that I don't know. I don't remember the date before them. Before this morning. No. Okay, let's go to this conversation that you had this morning. Do you recall what you discussed with Mr. Bugliosi? I certainly don't, because I'm in severe pain, and I certainly don't. So that's weird. She's in such severe pain, she can't remember a conversation that she had that morning. but she's still fit to. Okay. Any time, Mrs. Chapman, that you feel you can't go on, will you inform the court? I believe the court will give you a short recess. Thank you. Yeah, but listen to how they talk to her a minute. Now, you just stated that you don't recall the conversation you had with Mr. Bugliosi this morning. I don't. Do you recall any of the things you talked about? No. Was this conversation a long conversation or a short conversation? Short. 5 minutes? 10 minutes? I don't even know. I just made a couple of statements. And you don't recall the statements that he made to you? No. Now, did he, in the course of the conversation, show you any pictures? Before I came into the courtroom, I'm talking about this conversation you had with Mr. Bugliosi this morning. Did he show you any pictures? He showed me pictures here in the courtroom. Mr. Shin, Your Honour, may I approach the witness? The court, you may. Mr. Shin, I show you exhibit number 10. Did he show you that this morning? Yes. And did he ask you whether or not you remember where you wiped off the fingerprints or the print? Haven't got that. I can find that picture, but I haven't got it tonight, sorry. Yes. And you did indicate to him that area there? Yes. In other words, you knew what area to mark off when you marked off the... Well, I certainly did, since I'm the one who did the area. Now I'm going to get a doctor. The court. Just a minute. Proceed. Mr. Shin. Thank you. Mr. Shin. Was that area you marked off on that door, was that just a fast estimate? It wasn't a fast estimate. I marked that area off. I also told him I did the outside of the door, the lower part of it, the lower part. Well, let me ask you then now, when you saw this picture, how long did it take you to mark off that area? Mr. Bugliosi. That assumes facts not in evidence, Your Honour. She didn't say that she marked it off before she took the witness stand. The court. This objection is sustained. Reframe the question. Mr. Shin. When you looked at this picture this morning, did you make an estimate in your mind as to what area you were supposed to mark off? I didn't have to make an estimate in my mind. I already knew. In other words, as soon as I saw the picture of that particular door, certainly. Thank you. Now, do you recall how many conversations you had with the police? No. Considering this case? No. Would you say you had more than 5 conversations? I had conversations with 4 policemen up there at the estate that morning before they even took me to the hospital. Now, after that, did you have a conversation with the police? Certainly. Do you recall how many more times? No. Was it 5 times? I don't know. I just can't take much of this. The court. Just be quiet. The gentleman has a right to ask these questions. Wait for the question and answer. Mr. Shin. Now, during your conversation with the police, was there any talk about $25,000 reward money? Not with me, no. They never discussed anything like that with me, no. Did you know there was a $25,000 reward? Mr. Stovitz. Objected to. Assumes a fact not in evidence, Your Honour. The court. Sustained. Mr. Shin. Did you hear about a reward then? Yes. When was this? When I was in Seattle, my son-in-law mentioned it to me. I did not read it myself. My son-in-law mentioned it to me. Did he mention the amount? Yes. $25,000? Yes. Did the police at any time mention that amount? No, the police at no time mentioned the reward to me. Did you later ask the police about the reward? I did not. Mr. Stovitz. Objected to as immaterial and irrelevant. Mr. Shin. May I be heard? The court. Overruled. You may answer. Mr. Stovitz. The answer is in. The witness. I said I did not. Where does he get these questions from, Your Honour? The court. Mrs. Chapman, you are not permitted to address the court. You must wait for the question and answer only that question. Mr. Shin. Now, you also stated they had parties at the Polanski residence. Is that correct? Yes. I believe you stated you worked approximately a year and a half? Yes. And during all this year and a half, how many parties would you say they gave approximately? At the Mr. Stovitz. At which residence council? Mr. Shin. I said at the Tate residence. Mr. Stovitz. At the Tate residence, she only lived 6 months. I object to the questions as being argumentative and ambiguous, Your Honour. The court. Do you understand the question? The witness. Yes. The court. All right. The objection is overruled. You may answer. The witness. You did ask how many parties they gave. Mr. Shin. Yes. You had been working for the Polanskis for about a year and a half. Dinner guests and parties come under 2 different things. We entertained quite a bit. But as for large parties, I could not enumerate them. I will just put it like this. In other words, there were so many that it is pretty difficult to estimate. Not large parties, no, but as far as dinner guests and lunch guests, we had guests quite often. And did some of these parties last, say, to early in the morning? Yes. Say about 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning? Yes. And were you present at these parties sometimes? Yes. And in other words, you would help serve? Yes. Clean up? Yes. And then when the guests would leave, you would kind of straighten out the ashtrays and the furniture? Yes. Did you know Miss Folger? Yes. How long had you known her? Since August or September of 1968. And she would be a frequent visitor to the house? Yes. And how long have you known Frykowski? I met Wojtek possibly 2 days before I met Gibby. And Mr. Sebring? I met him shortly after I went to work for the Polanskis. He would come in and out of the house too? No, not just like that. Well, they were good friends, weren't they, of the Tates? Yes. I mean, the Polanskis? Yes. And he would come over sometimes. He would have dinner. No, he was not a frequent visitor, and he was not a frequent dinner guest, no. This is the thing, because I've heard he was a frequent visitor, so why is she saying that? Was he a frequent party guest? I had seen him at a couple of parties. During these parties, did you know the name of the guests? Were they familiar with you? The parties? Yes, the names of the guests that used to come to the house. Not at all. Not all the parties. Not when there was a large party. I didn't know the names of everyone there. I knew the names of their close friends. Okay, now let's get the names of the close friends. Do you know the names of the close friends that used to come to the parties? Yes. What are they? Mr. Stovitz. That is objected to as incompetent, irrelevant, and immaterial, Your Honour. The witness. Yes. The court. Is it getting beyond the scope of the direct exam? It is getting beyond the scope of direct examination, Mr. Shin. Mr. Shin. Well, Your Honour, I believe she did mention on the record that she worked there and entered to the parties, Your Honour, and catered to the parties, Your Honour. I believe we have a right to go on and find out who was there. Mr. Stovitz. Objected to as immaterial, irrelevant, outside the scope of the direct, Your Honour. Mr. Shin. For the purpose of that question, the objection will be overruled. You may proceed. Mr. Shin, thank you. The court. Was the question answered? The reporter, no. The court. Read the last question, whereupon the reporter read the pending question as follows. Okay, now let's take the names of the close friends. Do you know the names of the close friends that used to come up to the parties? Yes. What are they? Mr. Stovitz. That is objected to as being remote. The witness testified to a period from July 1969 to August the 8th, 1969. Anything else would be outside the scope of direct examination, Your Honour. If counsel wants to limit it from the time of July of 69, when Sharon Tate came back to the country, to August, we would have no objection to that time. Mr. Shin. I believe the court has already ruled. The court. I will sustain the objection on that ground. Rephrase your question. Mr. Shin. Yes, Your Honour. By Mr. Shin. During that time, you worked there then. Do you recall the names of the guests? Worked where now? At the Polanski residence. Which residence? Let's take the old residence first. What do you mean that you want to know about that? Well, I wanted to know the names of the guests that used to come there. Well, I could not give you all those names. There were too many people. Just give me some you remember, Mr. Stovitz, to which we object as being outside the scope of direct examination, Your Honour. The court. Sustained. Mr. Shin. Your Honour, may I take this witness as my own witness for this question? Mr. Stovitz. Objected to at this time. The court. Not at this time, Mr. Shin. Mr. Shin. At a later time then, Your Honour. The court. Oh, yes, of course. Mr. Shin. Thank you. By Mr. Shin. Now, during these parties, would they have liquor served? Mr. Stovitz. If you want to use my table, you will find it much more comfortable rather than the jury box. Did you understand the question? Don't know what you meant by that. The witness. No, I did not. I did not even hear it. Mr. Shin. I'm sorry. I said during the parties that would they be serving liquor? Well, yes, but I did not serve it. I did not serve it to them. In other words, you were there and you saw the bartender serving the liquor. Is that correct? Yes. And also you stated that you used to clean up after these parties. Yes. Do you know what a marijuana cigarette looks like? Your Honour, do I have to answer that question? The court. Yes, you have to answer the question. The witness. Yes, I do. Mr. Shin. Did you ever see any butts of marijuana cigarettes in the residence? Mr. Bugliosi. I object, Your Honour. It calls for a legal conclusion. It also is beyond the scope of direct examination. The court. Sustained. May I be heard, Your Honour? The court. The objection is sustained. Let's proceed. Mr. Shin, do you know what LSD is? No. Have you ever seen any LSD? No, not that I know of. Mr. Stovitz, objected to as immaterial and irrelevant, and I move to strike the answer. Mr. Shin, may I approach the bench to make an offer of proof, Your Honour? The court. I did not hear you, Mr. Shin. May I approach the bench to make an offer of proof? The court. Very well. The following proceedings were had at the bench out of the hearing of the jury. Mr. Shin, Your Honour, we have reason to believe, Your Honour. The court. Make your offer of proof. Mr. Shin, I'm going to make it right now. The court. I am not interested in what you believe. I want to hear the offer. Mr. Shin, we offer to prove. The court. By this witness, Mr. Shin, by this witness and the other witnesses, that the people, the court, this offer is with respect to this witness, Mr. Shin. This witness could testify whether or not she saw any type of narcotics in the residence. The court. What is your offer of proof, Mr. Shin? Mr. Shin, with this witness, yes, that she may be able to tell us whether or not there was any LSD, narcotics, drugs in the residence, Your Honour. The court. The objection is sustained. The following proceedings were had in open court within the presence and hearing of the jury. The court. You may step down, Mrs. Chapman. Am I finished? No, you're not finished. We're going to have a recess. Right, and they have a recess. Cool, and I'll have a recess for a second, just to have a break from reading. Yes, so basically, as soon as she mentions the pool boy, there's some pages missing. And yeah, I find it funny that they said to her, oh, if you feel like it's too much, tell us and we'll give you a short recess. But then when she says she's in pain and she can't take much more, he goes, be quiet. He has a right to ask you these questions. You listen to the question and answer it. It's like, oh my God. Yes. Sorry, what were people saying? I don't think they did pay her anything, did they? I don't know why they brought that up, really. Yeah, because she's saying that she never cared about the reward money. She never asked about the reward money. Her nephew mentioned it or something like that, yeah. Yeah, it's unclear if anyone did get that reward money. I thought that Ronnie Howard got it and Virginia Graham. It got split between Virginia Graham and Ronnie Howard, but I've heard that isn't true as well now. So, yeah, I don't know what happened to that actual reward money. Yeah. Yeah, cover it up. Does sound like a lot. Yeah, but it's really strange. Yeah. Oh, God, yeah, reading out the transcripts. That's the thing about the transcripts, because they do, yeah, when they keep objecting and he has to rephrase the question and all that. But yeah, but I want to see whose lawyer that was, because they was objecting to her saying who the people that went to their parties were. So it's like, yeah, trying to cover up the Hollywood connections, aren't they, to the Polanskis, basically. Yeah. Wouldn't let her say it. It does. Look how they're covering for the Hollywood crowd. That's what it sounds like, isn't it? Very much. And I can't believe that, yeah, those 2 pages are missing after she calls William Garretson the houseboy, or Bill Garretson, she refers to him as, doesn't she? She says he was the houseboy. And then there's 2 pages missing. And it goes to them talking about the pool again. Budos, said the reward money was split between Howard and the boy that found the gun and another inmate that Atkins told. Right, yeah, because I've also read in other articles that the money was paid as a bribe to the cops or whatever as well. So there's loads of rumours about what actually happened to that reward money, isn't there? Yeah, she acts offended, don't she? She acts hostile. And I can't understand why she keeps saying Jay wasn't a frequent visitor, because many other sources say that he was. So that's weird as well, that she says that she keeps saying that Jay wasn't a frequent visitor. It's weird. Anyway, I'll get back to reading it because that's not all of this part of the transcript. Right. All parties, yeah, right. Mrs. Chapman, you stated there was a loft in the living room. Yes, and there were stairs that you go up to this loft. Yes, and from this loft you could see the whole living room. Let's see. No, you could not. Sorry, just let me scroll down a bit. Let's see. No, you could not the part that was under the loft, not unless you leaned over it. In other words, this loft is not covered. Pardon? Is it covered, the loft? No response. Well, you go up into this loft, up the stairs, and you can look down into the living room. Answer, yes, down into most of it, but if you go to look back near the fireplace, you could not see back there unless you leaned over it. In other words, it was high enough for people to stand. Oh, yes. The ceiling. Yes. And from this exhibit, there is a kind of wall. A kind of what? A balcony. What do you mean, a balcony? Mr. Shin, may I approach the witness, Your Honour? The court, you say. Mr. Shin, thank you. By Mr. Shin, I show you Exhibit 14, this portion here. No, that's no balcony. You cannot stand on any of that. No, there was no balcony there. Well, from the loft, did you have any holes where you peeked into the living room? Looked out, yes. What do you mean, holes? Were there any peepholes, any square holes through which you could look down into the living room? You can see most of the living room. It wasn't covered. There wasn't any holes in any place. Now, you don't know any of the defendants, do you? No. You have never seen them before. I saw one when I was here at the grand jury. That was the only time. I'm speaking of before this thing happened. No, not that I know of. Not that I remember. Now, you also stated you did work. Were you present during some of the parties? Yes. Now, Sorry, it's really badly printed. Did you see any of the victims under the influence of either alcohol or drugs? Mr. Bugliosi, I object, Your Honour. It calls for a legal conclusion. The court, sustained. Your Honour, may I be heard on this matter, Your Honour? The court, there is no necessity for it, Mr. Shin. Mr. Shin, Your Honour, you sustain the objection, and I believe I have a right to the court. Let's proceed, Mr. Shin. Mr. Shin, I have nothing further, Your Honour, at this time. The court, Mr. Canarak. Cross-examination by Mr. Canarak. Mrs. Chapman, you never saw Mr. Manson before this courtroom, right? That's right, Mr. Canarak. Thank you, Your Honour. Mr. Hughes, Mrs. Chapman, on occasion you answered the phone at the Tate residence. Yes. And on August the 8th, did you receive a telephone call from Europe? Yes, I did. And was that telephone call from Roman Polanski? Yes, it was. And on August the 8th, did you also receive a telephone call from Mr. Peter Sellers? No, I didn't answer the phone for Peter Sellers. Did you answer the phone at any other time on August the 8th, Mrs. Chapman? Yes, I did. Do you recall who any of the other callers were beside Mr. Polanski? Yes, about 3:45, J.C. ring-called. And do you recall any other callers? No, there were other calls, but I don't recall who they were. Mrs. Chapman, you had some sort of wrapping around your left arm. Yes. Will you tell us what that is, please? I was in a taxicab accident recently. I see. Was that applied by a doctor? No, a nurse did that this morning. Is your arm giving you some pain right now? It most certainly is. Now, in the Polanski residence, Mrs. Chapman, there was a television set, was there not? Yes. And you had occasion to wash the set at times, wash the screen on that? Yes. You were familiar with the other electrical equipment around the set, around the television set, around the television set. There was no electrical equipment around the TV set. Have you ever seen that set operate, Mrs. Chapman? Yes, the one in the master bedroom, yes. Was there more than one set in the house? Yes. How many sets were there? There were two. There was one in the master bedroom, and another one was located where? In the bedroom that Gibby and Wojtek used. And next to either of those sets, was there some other piece of electrical equipment? No. I would refer particularly to a videotape recorder, which would allow playback of pre-recorded tapes, or tapes which had been made from the screen. I don't recall that. You never saw tapes played at the house which had been, no, played over the TV set? No. Mr. Hughes, may I have a moment, Your Honour? The court, yes. And they confer. Hughes and Mr. Fitzgerald confer. Mr. Hughes, I have here, Your Honour, a black box which I would ask to have marked as Defendant Van Houten's for identification. Would I give it to the clerk, Your Honour? The court, it will be so marked. The cardboard box. Mr. Hughes, a cardboard box, and I can show you the picture of that as well. Wait a second. This is the tape box they showed her. That's where that tape box comes from. They showed it to Winifred Chapman. So there you have it. All right. And this is nearly finished now, this bit. A cardboard box. May I approach the witness, Your Honour? Very well. Yes, Mrs. Chapman. I hand you a box, a black box. Would you read the inscription on that, please? But that wasn't on top of any TV, not when I was there. Would you read the inscription on that, please? Videotape. Yes, I see. Have you ever seen a box similar to this with the words videotape in the Polanski residence? There weren't any on television, on any television. If there were any there, it was in the cupboards where the hi-fi was, and I had nothing to do with them. No, I didn't have to handle them. They weren't on any TV. You say you did not have to handle them, but you did see them in the cupboards. Mr. Stovitz, that is objected to. The witness, no, I did not say I saw them in the cupboards. I said if there were any there. The court, just a moment. When there is an objection, wait for the ruling. Mr. Stovitz, I will withdraw the objection and let the answer stand. Mr. Hughes, no further questions. The court, read the last question and answer, whereupon the report. So you didn't have to handle them. Right. Just repeats the same question. No further questions. On behalf of the people, Your Honour, may the witness be excused and will be subject to recall at a subsequent time. Yeah, and they let her go, basically, and then they call William Garretson. But yeah, that's for another night. Right, so that is the first bit of the transcript. And like I say, the next bit is where she actually talks about what she saw the day of the murders when she walked in. Because it's actually more than I thought. I was sort of, the way he talks about it in Helter Skelter leads you to believe she didn't get very far into the house at all before she saw blood and ran away because she saw blood. But no, she did actually walk almost right into the living room. So she saw the bodies, the poor woman. Yeah, so she did actually walk right into the house, but we'll get to that. And I've even got a diagram showing you the route she took and how far she got. But because she walked into the room, she saw a couple of things. So yeah, she mentioned stuff about the trunks, but I'll get to that in a bit. But yeah. Sorry, I just got to look at the chat because I can't see the chat when I'm reading stuff out of the transcript. And yeah, and the thing about the phone call from Peter Sellers, just because she didn't answer the phone to him, it doesn't mean he didn't ring. But that's all she says is she didn't answer the phone to him. But Peter Sellers might have read. Yeah, so yeah, it's just quite crazy, isn't it, basically? I'll get the next bit of the transcript. There. Yeah, so did anyone have anything to say about that? Because I don't just want to go straight on to reading the next bit of the transcript. Go have a break for a second. But yeah. Definitely indicates they're covering something up, doesn't it? And it's strange that she's had a hand injury that day as well. She's in loads of pain from a hand injury. It made me wonder if they got her and done some damage to her hand and said if you say certain things or whatever, if she'd been threatened. But that is, yeah, it's interesting. Glad people find it interesting, yeah, and that's it. And the next bit is even more interesting because it tells you. But yeah, she confirms a few things that were sort of in doubt before. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Apparently, Bugliosi, someone else said that Bugliosi said he did receive some of the reward money. I don't know, because I don't know what really happened to the reward money. That's the thing. I've read so many things about what possibly happened to that reward money. Yeah. Yeah, they're giving her a hard time. Well, she's just, they're just trying to get information about what was going on at the house from her, by the sound of things, aren't they? And there's someone objecting every time they try to get her to say who used to come to the parties. So that looks like, they were just protecting the Hollywood lot, doesn't it? And then there's the bit where there's 2 pages missing when she gets asked about the houseboy. Well, as soon as she calls him a houseboy, there's 2 pages missing. So it's, it looks quite sus so far, doesn't it? And they say they're going to be nice to her and she should just say if she wants a recess. But then when she acts like she's in pain and she says, I can't take much more of this, he's quite stern with her and says, don't listen to the question. He has a right to ask you these questions. It's like, what? Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, good thing there wasn't a butler. Joe Sebring had a butler, didn't he? So I was surprised. Yeah, Joe Sebring's butler was never accused. Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing. Yeah, maybe she was covering it up from Roman. Yeah, she was covering that up for Sharon, maybe. Who knows? But I found that weird. Twice she says, no, he wasn't a regular visitor. He wasn't a regular dinner guest. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, sorry. Check out the chat for a minute. I say, need a break from reading for a second. But yeah, it gets more interesting now as well, because it's actually what happened when she got there. And like I say, she walked actually further into the house than I was led to believe by what I'd read previously she had. And she's able to tell you a couple of things. Yeah, and the other thing about that tape player, I've got to go through the boxes of evidence and find it again. I couldn't find it in time for this screen. But it's Courtney watching this, because I know I talked to Courtney in the comments about this picture. But there's a picture of a TV thing that's in Wojtek and Abigail's room, and it's got tapes all around it. And it's one of those it's got an inbuilt video player, like what Manson said Dennis Wilson bought him. There's one of those in Wojtek and Gibby's room, and you can see tapes around it. I'm sure you can. I've got to go and bloody find that picture again. I couldn't find it in time for the screen. But I remember having a conversation with Courtney about it, and it was there to show audition tapes or something like that. They had a reason to have it. There was some official reason why they had that tape player thing. But yeah, so she's lying about that. Well, unless she didn't know it had a tape player built in, because these things were rare in those days. We've got to remember this was new, absolutely new technology. So she possibly didn't know that it was possible to have an inbuilt tape player in the TV. She did say there was a TV in Wojtek and Gibby's room, didn't she? But she probably just didn't know it was even possible to have one with. Yeah. And she says that interesting thing about she never looked in the cupboards. So she didn't know if there was tapes, because they would have been kept in the cupboards. And she mentions a hi-fi as well being in the cupboard as well, doesn't she? Because there's a rumour that a stereo was stolen, and it's just been withheld from the public. It's never been released by the police that this stereo went. But she says nothing was missing except the tripod. So she doesn't say in court that the stereo was taken. So who knows? Yeah, casting couch tapes. That sort of audition tape. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Nothing about the missing steak knives, and they were a wedding present, weren't they? So yeah, you'd think she would have noticed that there was a set of steak knives taken. But yeah, she didn't notice that. And she mentions the hi-fi, but she says the only thing missing was a tripod. And when they ask her about tapes, she says, I don't know if there are any tapes in the house. They would have been in cupboards. I didn't look in the cupboards, was basically her answer, wasn't it? Oh, yeah, good. Watch the first bit on the playback. But yeah, the good bit's what I'm about to read out next. Yeah, that's a point. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that either. Yeah, she didn't mention the steak knives, the set of steak knives. They were quite a fancy set as well, weren't they? Yeah, so she should have noticed that. So yeah, there's a lot she's not saying. And like I said, I just found it weird that she has a hand injury suddenly just before she's about to testify. Did someone get to her? Maybe the tripod was to hold up a camera. I think we get to her talking about that in this next bit. Yeah, a tripod, a camera tripod. Yeah. But she says nothing about there ever being a camera there. Why would you have a tripod if there was no camera? Why doesn't she mention there was camera equipment as well? So there's a lot that she's not saying. That's what jumps out at me. Yeah. Anyway, I'll start reading out this next bit so it's done. Right, so this is the next time she's in court. And this is volume 63 of the transcript. Right, so Mr. Stovitz is examining it now. Mrs. Chapman, do you recall when you were last here, you told us that you left on Friday evening, August the 8th, 1969, from the Polanski residence? Do you remember telling us all that? Yes. All right, now, do you recall what time it was when it was that you next returned to the Polanski residence? Between 8 and 8:30 Saturday morning. So that was the very next following day, is that right? Yes. And did you go by car, by bus, or by helicopter from your home to the Polanski residence? Which is a weird thing to say, isn't it? I went by city bus part of the way and then by car the rest of the way. And do you recall where it was that the bus left you off? Cannon Drive and Santa Monica. Did you wait there for a lift, or did you try to hitchhike, or did you start walking, or what happened next? I started to call a cab. I happened to see a fellow there that I used to work with, and I asked him to run me up. And then you went into this man's automobile, is that right? Yes. And he drove you to where? Up to the gate. Can you see from your spot there on the witness stand, this diagram, exhibit 98 here? If you can't, just tell me. Pause. Can you see this diagram, 98, from where you are sitting? Yes. This street going north is Benedict Canyon Drive. Santa Monica will be down here, where the diagram folds up. He took you up to Benedict Canyon. Did he take you up to Cielo Drive? Yes. Up the hill? Yes. How close to the gate did he take you? Not all the way up to the gate. He stayed back so he could turn around. There isn't much room up there. Then you got out of this man's car? Yes. What did you do next? I pushed the button and went in the gate. Do you have to wait for a signal back from somebody in the house to have the gate open, or does it open automatically? It opens automatically. You don't need a key or anything like that. You just push the button. Just push the button. Does this gate then slide back, or does it swing back? It swings back. Did you notice anything unusual when you got to the gate? Yes, I noticed the wires being over. What kind of wires were they? Well, at the time, I wasn't sure whether they were electrical or telephone, but after the gate opened, I knew it wasn't electricity. All right, so then what did you do next? I went on in the gate and I picked up the paper. As I passed the garage, I snapped out a light that was in the garage. I unlocked the back door and I went into the house. May I have some water? Do you want some water? Please. Mr. Stovitz, I believe you brought your own cup with you. The witness, yes. The cups that we furnish are not that good. Mr. Stovitz, all right, Mrs. Chapman. The paper, was it in its usual place there? Well, it doesn't always lie in the same place. It was on the ground. I picked it up. Do you know, when of your own knowledge, whether the person who delivers that paper, does he come in through the gate or does he flip it over the gate? I don't know. I am never there when the paper is delivered. Do you know of your own knowledge what time the paper is delivered? No, I do not. Do you remember what kind of paper it is? The Los Angeles Times. All right, now, you flipped off the light. What light did you flip off? The one up over the garage, up over the steps of the garage. And what happened next? I went on around the back door and went in the house. All right, now without bringing out that big Exhibit 8 again, I'm going to show you an aerial photograph, which is an 8 by 11 photograph of what has been shown to be the Tate residence. Mr. Stovitz, may this be marked 100? The clerk, 100 is next. The court, it will be so marked. By Mr. Stovitz, you have never seen the Tate residence from a helicopter or airplane as shown in this picture, have you? No. But by looking at this picture, do you recognise the house there? Yes, I do. And you recognise this as the gate you say swung open? Yes. Now, as you were walking towards the garage to turn off the light, did you notice anything of a strange automobile being there? I'm used to seeing automobiles there, so I didn't think about it being strange. I just thought we had guests, so I am used to automobiles being there. After you left the garage, when you turned off the light, did you go right up to the main house? Yes, I go round the back. You show us with the blue crayon on Exhibit 100 how you got to the back of the house, if you can. How you got to the back of the house, if you can, on that thing. I don't know if I can. Yeah. You pass the garage. We'll see down between here is a little walkway. We'll just... If you are testifying, you have to keep your voice up, Mrs. Chapman. Mr. Stovitz. You see this crayon here? It makes a mark. You see how it made a mark on top? Yes, I know. Explaining how a crayon works. You say you went down here like that? Yes. Now, is there more than one back entrance to the back of the house? No, just the kitchen, going into the kitchen from that way. And there actually is another entrance. That's the crazy thing. She gets that wrong as well. So when you go into the kitchen, did you have to use the key to get in? Yes, I did. And did you use the key to get in? Yes, I did. Did you notice whether or not the back light, the porch light, whether it was on or off? It was not on because it was burnt out. So we know the light on the back porch was burnt out. So when that happened, after you got inside the kitchen, I put my purse on the kitchen table and I went to the telephone and picked it up and it was dead. What happened next? So I started up to awaken someone to tell them that we did not have a phone. And what is the next room that you go into from the kitchen? The dining room. And I have a picture of the outside of that dining room. Let's see. I will show you Exhibit 26 here. This is from the front of the house. Is that the dining room back there? Yes. And did you have a bouquet of flowers on the dining room table? Yes, that is not the table there. That is a little stand that is close to the window. This is the table over here. The table is where the round red circle is. Is that correct? Yes. And the bouquet of flowers is on a little stand by the window. Yes. But that is the dining room you came into. Yes. All right. And does that dining room have a chandelier to your knowledge? I don't think so. Are there large, expensive chandeliers throughout the Polanski residence? No. What happened after you got into the dining room? I went into the hall, and this is where I saw too much. All right. Now, do you remember what you next did or saw after you went into the hallway? What do you mean, what I saw? What did you next do or see after you went into the hallway and saw what was too much? I noticed the trunks first in the home. They were not there when I left the night before. Right, so the trunks were not by the door. I show you Exhibit 27 for identification, a photograph of 2 blue steamer trunks, or footlookers. Are those the trunks you are talking about? Yeah, I can show you some of the pictures. What number did he say? He said 108, didn't he? I think. Did he say 108? No, 27. He calls it 27, doesn't he? So it's not 108 there, but those are the pictures of the trunks. And they were not there the night before. Winifred Chapman tells us that. So they were moved to be near the door for some reason. And we don't know why. By who either. But possibly happened later when people went back to the crime scene. Right. Right. Did you notice this before you noticed this thing that astonished you? Yes, I noticed the trunks before I got into the house. All right, and I show you Exhibit 14 for identification. Could you show us in relation to this photograph where the hall is that you are talking about? It is just a tiny foyer. It comes back this way. It's not a big long hall. It is a little foyer. You come in the front door or you go through the dining room. All right. Now there appears to be a red and white cloth on the couch there. Do you see that? Yes, I do. What is that red and white cloth? That is an American flag. And the couch appears to be a 6 or 7 foot couch. It is long. Is it a long couch? Yes. Do you know whether or not the American flag covered the major portion at the back of that couch, or was it just part of the couch? It covered the major portion. You would say that the American flag was about as big as the flag in the court here. I did not see it open. It was almost as large. It was a large flag. Do you remember when it arrived? If you have any knowledge about when it arrived at the Polanski residence? No, I don't remember what day. Was it there on the Friday when you left? Oh, yes. Right, so it was over the couch. That's the other thing that she reveals. The American flag was over the couch on Friday night. Had it been there for a day or two before? It had been there for several weeks. And do you remember the occasion for its arrival? Well, did it come for July the 4th, let's say? No, not that I know of. I wasn't there at the house when it did arrive. It arrived one night, and then the next day, when I went back, it was there. On Friday, August the 8th, when you left the home, where was the American flag? On the back of the couch. Similar to the way it is depicted now on that photograph you just saw. Well, it was straightened out. Now, you tell me what you came in through this little foyer and you looked in and you saw what you saw. Uh-huh. I know it might be painful for you, Mrs. Chapman, but just tell us briefly what you can. What did you see and what did you do next? I can tell you what I did next. To put into words what I saw is just entirely too hard on me. After viewing the effects of, or whatever words you wanted to use, I turned around and I took my purse from the kitchen table and I ran back out of that house after what I saw. All right, now before running outside of the kitchen door with your purse, did you notice whether or not the front door was open or closed? It was open. Did you notice whether or not the back bedroom door that leads to the pool, whether that was open or closed? Yes, open, the door leading to the pool. Now, I know it is very difficult for you. You did not have a motion picture camera. But can you tell us whether or not you noticed those doors open before you were astonished by these bodies or after? I knew the front door was open before I got all the way into the foyer, but I was all the way in, practically at the entrance of the living room, when I noticed the door to the pool being open. So you had a recollection of picking up your purse, is that right? Oh, yes. And what happened next? I ran out, and of course I had to push a button to get out of the gate, so she touched the button first. Well, we'll get to discussing that in a minute. I went to the first neighbour's house, and I did not get in. I went up to the second neighbour's house, and I went right in. Question. All right, after you got in, did somebody make a phone call for you? Yes. And after the phone call, did certain police officers arrive? Yes, they did. Can you give us an estimate of the time as to how long after the phone call before the police arrived? There were 3 calls put in before the police arrived. I think there were 3. I know there were 2. Can you tell us the time interval? No, it was after 9. It was after 9 when they arrived. All right, when the police arrived, did you go back to the house with the police on that occasion? No, I went out and saw the officer. I showed them how to get in the gate. At that time, did you notice anything about the wires? No. At the time that you were coming back to exit to leave the Polanski residence to go call the police, did you notice this white car? Yes. Are you referring to the car that did not belong to anybody you knew of? Yes. What did you notice about that car, if anything? Well, I saw a body in it. But when you were going up in the house for the first time, did you notice that body? No, I didn't. Mrs. Chapman, when you had left on August the 8th, 1969, did you notice whether or not there was anything written on the front door of the house leading up to the Polanski residence? There was nothing written on it. I went out the front door when I left. More particularly, the word pig. No, there was nothing on it. You are certain of that? Yes, I left through the front door. Now, when you came back that morning of August 9th, did you notice the door at the time as to whether... I did not see the front of the door. That is, from the outside of the house, is that right? I did not. Now, with respect to a rope, probably some 20 feet in length and about 1/2 to 3/8 of an inch or 5/8 of an inch in diameter, did you notice anything about a rope hanging across the beams of the living room, as shown in this photograph, Exhibit 14? I don't remember that part of it. What is that? When you left on August the 8th, was that rope there? No. Was the ladder that is shown in this photograph, Exhibit 14? Yes, it stayed there. Now, several days later, did you come back into the house with some police officers? Yes, I did. Did you look around the house? Yes. And what, if anything, were you looking for? Well, we were trying to determine if there was anything missing from the house. And this was in the company and observation of police officers. Is that right? Yes. Did you determine whether or not there was anything missing to your knowledge? No, there was nothing missing. Oh yes, there was a tripod from the master bedroom closet. What about, like, say, mink coats or fur coats, things like that? Were there fur coats in there when you left on August the 8th? No, they had been put in storage. So then there were no fur coats missing because there wasn't any there to be taken. Is that right? That's right. Now, what about expensive paintings or things like that? No. Anything missing like that? No. What about expensive costume jewellery? Did Miss Polanski keep any expensive costume jewellery around? Well, that was all in her jewel case. It wasn't lying around. Where was the jewel case? It usually stayed in the chest in the master bedroom. And when you went back with the police officers, was that jewel case still there? No. Where was it? Well, I think the officers had it. Could you determine, to your own knowledge, whether or not anything was missing? Only the tripod. With respect to this tripod, is this just an ordinary tripod, that is, that holds up a camera? Yes. And you know where the tripod was on August the 8th? In the closet in the master bedroom. That is where it usually stayed. What about any of the clothing from any of the men, such as Frykowski? Did he keep his clothing there at the house? Yes. Could you determine whether any of that clothing was missing? No. I show you exhibit number... Let's see it. It is exhibit number 6. I direct your attention to a light next to a doorway of a garage. Was that the light you turned off? Yes. I direct your attention to what appears to be wires strung from the top of the garage to the ground. Were those wires in that condition when you arrived on August 9th, 1969? Yes. Mr. Stavitz, may I, with the court's permission, mark a square around the light on exhibit number 6? The court, yes. And look at this. See the blue square around the light? Oh, do you remember we were talking about this picture and I said, oh, we'll never know what they were trying to show there. Now we know. That's the square he drew around the light that she turned off. So we know that light was on as well when she got there. Whether that was on as the murders were happening or if that was turned on by people going back there, we'll probably never know. But anyway. Right. Mrs. Chapman. I am putting a square here. Will you keep an eye on what I am doing and make sure that it is the right light? Mr. Stavitz marks. That is the light, right? Yes. Did you have to walk up a stairway to turn off that light? No. Where is the button? I passed it as I go around the walk at the bottom by the garage. Is it a switch or a button? It is the kind you push down. You don't push it in. Like this one here that says fan in the courtroom. Is that right? Can you see it right here? Yes. You may inquire. No questions. Mr. Stavitz, you may inquire. Mr. Fitzgerald, no questions. The court, Mr. Shin, any questions? Mr. Shin, yes, Your Honour. No, Your Honour, I have no questions. What, yes or no? Crazy bastard. The court, Mr. Canarak, any questions? Mr. Canarak, no questions. The court, Mr. Hughes, no questions. Mr. Stavitz, may we, with the permission of the court, excuse the witness? Yes, you are excused. Yeah, so that's it. That's all she said. Oh, yes. So, yeah, if you're in the Facebook group, you'd have already seen that. But she confirms the American flag was on the back of the sofa the night before. So that wasn't done by the people staging the crime scenes. And she said the trunks were not in that lobby by the door when she left. So that was done after as well. And, yeah, we now know what that little blue mark is. They were showing the light that she turned off. And that light was switched on as well. Yeah, someone else brought up the set of steak knives that was missing that she doesn't mention. And she says nothing about the hi-fi because there's a rumour that a stereo got stolen as well, and that information's just not been released by the police. But I thought in court you had to tell the truth. So yeah, she lied in court, didn't she? If she said nothing else was missing, that's the crazy thing. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's it. I looked at the way he was, the way he sort of slumped in the car as well. Yeah, she didn't notice she didn't notice anyone sat in the car. He is sort of sat right back in the seat. So maybe if you weren't really looking at the car, you might not notice him as you walked in. He was sort of slumped right back in the seat with his arm curled up. If you actually look at the picture, his head's right back in it like that. Yeah, so maybe it is possible she didn't see him as she walked past it the first time. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, just look at what people were saying when I was reading that out. Cool, and that went on for an hour. So yeah, about time. Well, we'll discuss it a bit before I go to an after show. Yeah. Sorry, to see if anyone said anything good. What was there? Yes, yeah, that was the other point as well. Yeah, she touched the button. Yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. Yeah. We know Winifred Chapman touched the button before that cop did. And someone else pointed out if Cass Elliott was there, because apparently John Phillips was seen climbing back over the fence, so he didn't touch the button. But could Cass Elliott have climbed over the fence? That's the thing. I don't think that Cass Elliott probably drove right in her June buggy, didn't she? And I can't see her being able to jump over the fence. And if she drove in her June buggy, she would have to open the gate to get out, wouldn't she? So Cass Elliott would have touched the switch as well before Winifred Chapman. So yeah, at least we know at least one person touched it before the cop. And yeah, but thinking about it, yeah, if Cass Elliott went in, she couldn't have got out without touching the switch, could she? Unless she climbed over the fence. But having said that, it isn't that high. You sort of scramble up an embankment. It wouldn't, and if you was absolutely terrified and didn't want evidence of you being there, then. But yeah, her fingerprint would be on the button going in, wouldn't it? Then it would depend how many other people opened the gate that night later, wouldn't it? Yeah. Yeah. The door opened when she arrived. Yeah, she says the front door was open when she arrived, and the door leading out to the pool was open. But the service entrance she had to unlock. That wasn't open. And oh yes, I wanted to show you this other diagram too that I made, just to show you the route she took. Sorry, the line's a bit janky, but yeah, the X is marking where the light was that she turned off. And the line is showing she's gone up through the paved parking area. And sorry, I'll make it bigger. If I do that, it makes it slightly bigger, doesn't it? She's gone over that porch, through that service area, through the kitchen, through the dining room. And then she says she walked nearly into the living room. And so she saw the bodies. And then she turns and runs back out again, presumably taking the same route. That would be the route. But look, she said there was only one entrance at the back, but there's not. There's another entrance to the living room. Here, look, the rear entrance. There's a one on the. If you look at the living room, there is another door. If you know what a door looks like on a plan, right? There is another entrance to the living room, the rear entrance, other than the service entrance. So that's another thing she says that's wrong. But yeah, that would be the route that she took. She walked up through the car park, in through the service entrance. But yeah. Crazy stuff. But yeah, it's crazy. So like, we don't know who turned that light on as well. Was that light on when they arrived, and was it on throughout the murders, or did the people that came back later turn the light on? But it had been left on apparently because the maid turned it off when she saw it on. And she was walking through the house as if to go and wake up Sharon to tell her the phone was dead. And as soon as she's got to the living room doorway, she's obviously seen their bodies, hasn't she? The poor woman turned around and run out. Right, well, I could go to an after show soon because this has gone on for an hour. So, but yeah, did anyone else have anything else to say about that? But yeah, that's the big bits of information. Basically, are the American flag was on the sofa the night before. She said it was, and the trunks were not by the door the night before. So did she? I mean, I suppose they could have moved them there before anyone arrived and the murder started happening. But yeah, that looks, because I always thought the trunks, it looked like they'd been put there to be filled up with stuff, but then they'd abandoned that idea or something like that. But Jay's blood is on it. So where were they when Jay's blood got on it? Were they there when Jay was running past to get out the door, or what? It's so confusing. I think the trunk showed up after she got off work and the day before, and that Garretson thought it was the drug shipment. Possibly, yeah. And also, just reading people talking about this, it was a Friday or Saturday night as well, wasn't it? Friday night going into Saturday. And everyone would know that drug dealers get a shipment on Friday and Saturday night. It's probably their busiest night, isn't it? So it would be pretty easy to predict when stuff was going to show up. And we got that thing from Ginger Baker's biography as well. The guy that was very probably Tom Harrigan, I estimate, would have been one of the Canadians at least who sold Ginger Baker cocaine cheap because he got it for Sharon Tate's party. But he had to hand himself in and he was shitting himself because he had this cocaine. So he sold it to Ginger Baker really cheap. I do like that one. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it's good to be able to show you some pictures as well. And now I've worked out how to do that. Yeah, it's quite simple. Oh, but there's other things like in this box 11, there's a weird picture of a little blue like vial full of powder. And I looked for the date on that in the transcript to see what that was all about. And that volume of the transcript is missing. So it's like, oh God, you know, there's stuff that there's so much missing. And like I say, you've even got to read the transcripts very carefully because there can be pages missing from what transcripts there are now. I've noticed that. I only noticed that because the question didn't make sense. And then when I actually checked the page numbers, 2 pages have been removed. Just as she starts talking about houseboys. She's like, oh my God. What are they doing? And yeah, I found it really suspicious that lawyer kept objecting to stop her from saying who was going to the parties. That's more just like Hollywood people being protected, isn't it? It looks like. Still very sus. But yeah, it's good to know that for sure. So we know for sure now that the American flag was on the back of the sofa. And the trunks were not by the door at 4 o'clock when she left. When they got moved there is still a mystery. But the fact Jay's blood was on it suggests they were there after the murders started happening and after Jay was going out of the door bleeding. But we're told by the official narrative, Jay never even left the living room. He got shot and stabbed in the living room and just died there. So, you know, so much just doesn't add up when you look at the evidence, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I think I'll end this now and I'll go to an after show then because this has gone on over an hour. Thanks for coming, everyone. Had a really big audience. It was 75 at one point, 64 people here. Now, yeah, just give me a... Oh, and like the video if you haven't already. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Because, yeah, I've done lots and lots of... Most of my channel is about the Manson case and the alternate theories and all the things that don't add up. If you're interested in that sort of thing. Yeah. We'll have a look at my channel. Yeah, the bike delivered. I found an interview with the guy who delivered the bike. There's a really good interview with the guy that it was for Abigail, wasn't it? I think the bike, or was it for Sharon? I can't remember. But yeah, the guy who delivered the bike talks about yeah. There's a long interview with him. Yeah, it was delivered on the Friday night as well. Yeah. So I'll end this now and we'll go to an after show. Thanks for coming, everyone, and hang around. Look for the notification for the after show. Oh, I'll see you Sunday. If not, yeah, because I'll be carrying on with reading out the bullet points of everything that was said in that chapter of the book. Excellent. Right, so I'll see you in a bit. Bye-bye.